If you're dreaming of lake life or coastal vibes and all things summer, you're in the right place. Today I'm taking 5 raw wood planks and transforming them into stunning home decor pieces. I'll show you how to create a colorful welcome sign with a twist. We'll take 3 scrap wood blocks and use some stain blending to create statement pieces inspired by lake life and coastal charm. We'll take one of our medium wood tags, create a dreamy water and sky blend, layer in a stencil and transfer, and leave you wishing you were right there. On our next piece, gorgeous blending, but I'll be real, the stencil I chose didn't quite work for the horizon. Let's talk about why and what I'd do differently next time. And finally, I'll show you how to create a driftwood effect with stain and combine a few different stencils, perfect for welcoming friends with coastal charm. I'm Cindy, my husband is Chris. Welcome to CnC DIY Factory. We hope you are inspired. Hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. In Project 1, I will use an oar or a paddle that I purchased from Michael's, and I'll start with taking the hanger off and giving it a quick sand to make sure it's smooth. I'll be using my favorite Minwax water-based stain that I get from Lowe's or Menards in the color Aged Barrel. This stain is water-based and it does not have an odor and it is safe to use indoors. I'll work in sections and apply the stain with a staining sponge. Once I have the stain applied, I'll spritz the board with my water mister and using a lint-free towel, wipe away the excess stain to create a weathered look. When you apply moisture to raw wood, it will raise the grain of the wood, so once the entire board is stained and dry, I'll use my sanding sponge and smooth it down. I enjoy working with stencils, and this stencil is from Essential Stencil, and it's part of their new coastal collection called Customizable Coastal Welcome. Once I have the stencil lined up where I want it on the board, I will use an Essential stencil brush and some acrylic paint. I load up my brush with the paint and then I offload the excess paint onto a lint-free towel. The secret to good stenciling is to work the paint into the bristles of your brush while offloading the excess paint, leaving you with a mostly dry brush. To get good coverage, you want to use multiple light coats of paint and dry them between coats. For this welcome sign, I want to create a bit of a shadow, and to do this, I line up the stencil exactly where it was, then I move the stencil up and to the left slightly, and then I secure the stencil in place. I used a darker color first to create the shadow, and now I'm applying a lighter color to the top. It's subtle and may be difficult to see on camera, but in person it is a very nice effect. I want to give this welcome sign a bit of color and whimsy. I'm using another stencil from Essential Stencil that is from the Amanda Dillon Coastal Collection. This is the fish scale stencil. I will use 4 different acrylic metallic paints to create an iridescent shimmer to the scales, applying 1 coat of the paint randomly across the board. The customizable Coastal Welcome stencil set came with 3 different images to use for the O in the welcome, but I'm going to use a different image from another set of stencils, also from Essential Stencil. This one is the Sail Away stencil set, and I'll be using the helm to create the O. The oar came with a small hole in the handle, but I needed it to be bigger to fit the rope that I wanted to use. So I took this out to my shop and I drilled a larger hole. I then sealed the entire piece with a brush-on clear matte sealer. Once I position the rope where I want it, I'll use hot glue to secure the pieces together and wrap a piece of twine around it for a finished look. Then I'll add a sawtooth hanger to the back. Now, sometimes when I'm creating, I don't always remember to hit the record button, so I didn't get this on camera, but I also took a novelty fishnet that I found at Dollar Tree and I attached it to the oar. I think this finished piece gives all the feels of being on the boardwalk, maybe having a beverage and soaking in the sun. Let me know what you think of this coastal welcome sign. In project 2, we're taking 3 scrap blocks of wood. These can be any type of scrap wood you have on hand. Mine measure approximately 4 by 6 and are about 1 1/4 inches thick. I'm starting with Minwax water-based stain in pure white. This is what is on the shelf at Lowe's or Menards and can be tinted to any color you choose. When blending, if you put down a coat of white first, it makes it easier to blend the colors seamlessly. My first color is Wild Honey. I will apply this to the bottom third of the block, making sure the white is still moist for blending. My next color is Vintage Orange. I'll add this to the middle of the block. And my third color is Barn Red to finish the top of the block. Now that we have all 3 colors added, it's time to blend them. I don't want to see any lines indicating where one starts and the other ends, so I will use my misting bottle to add some water to the block and gently work the stain, adding more color as needed to achieve the blending that I'm wanting. On the second block, I'm using weathered oak and I am applying this to the bottom half of the block. I'm not using the white on this block this time. For the top half of the block, I am using Colton Blue. I need to work fairly quickly so the stain does not dry or my blending will become a little more challenging. I'll make sure I get the edges and then soften the center where the 2 colors meet. For the third block, we are starting with a pure white again, adding this to the top of the block, then I will add a bit of the weathered oak over this and around the edges. I will add more weathered oak around the outer edges of the block and then the pure white in the center, and I'll work the colors in a circular motion, creating a light source in the center of the block. To give the sides of the block and the outer edges more depth, I'm adding in Legacy Brown. I will continue to work the 3 colors along with using my misting bottle to create the smooth transition. And once the stain is dried on all 3 blocks, I will use my sanding sponge to smooth down the grain for a silky smooth texture. I'll use 3 stencils from this essential stencil set called The Lake is My Happy Place. I'll be using a white heavy-bodied acrylic paint for this set. I am using a 1/2-inch stencil brush that is also from Essential Stencil, making sure to offload my paint on a lint-free towel. Too much paint on your brush will cause bleed through and the lines to be blurry. When I apply my stencils, I use a swirling motion with my brush, most of the time, but there are other techniques that are just as effective to determine which method works for you, and this will take just a little bit of practice. I like to apply multiple layers of thin coats of paint for solid coverage, making sure to dry the coats in between so as not to pull up the paint. To finish these 3 blocks, I will add a brush on top coat to seal in the paint and protect it. These 3 shelf sitters are quick and easy to make and would fit perfectly in a coastal bathroom or on a side table in a lake house or in a camper. I love how the colors play off of each other and give the lake life vibe. In Project 3, we are using one of our CnC DIY Factory's medium-sized wood tags, and I'll start off with applying the pure white stain to the entire surface for ease of blending. For the bottom portion of this tag, I want to create the look of water, so I'm applying the Minwax water-based stain in navy, and then I'll blend in some Colton Blue to create some depth. For the top portion of the tag, I want to create the appearance of a sunset. I'm using the colors Wild Honey, Vintage Orange, and Barn Red, working from the center of the tag to the top, making sure to use my misting bottle to keep the stain damp in order to blend the colors. For the horizon, I am adding in some of the pure white and blending down into the blue. I want the blues to blend seamlessly, but I also want to make the distinction between the water and the sky with the white. Keeping a moist edge is a must when blending. You can see how it just softens that line of color. For this tag, I will use another one of the stencils from the Essential Stencil set, The Lake is My Happy Place. This one doesn't fit my tag, so I'm going to break this up a bit and tape off areas so I can place the wording where I want it on the tag. I'm using the heavy-bodied acrylic white paint and an Essential stencil brush in the 1/2 inch size. I had originally planned to use a resin casting of the sailboat and the seagulls, but the size was just out of scale for this piece. So I turned to the Essential Stencil Transfer Set, Coastal Set, where I found a sailboat that fit perfectly. To apply a transfer, you will need to make sure the surface is completely dry, then peel off the white backer and position your transfer where you want it. Then take the transfer tool and rub the surface to release the image. Take your time, pay close attention to the small details of the transfer so you don't miss them. If that happens, just lay the carrier sheet back down and rub over it and it should transfer. Then you turn your carrier sheet over and burnish the transfer into the surface. I added a coat of clear brush-on top coat to seal and protect it, and a fun nautical cord to the top of the tag. And I wish I were standing right there at the water's edge. In Project 4, I am using a wood blank from the Dollar Tree. I'm starting with the Minwax water-based stain in weathered oak at the bottom of the board. Then I'll add in the Colton blue and then the navy blue. I want to create the look of a sandy shoreline moving into the water. Now, I love how the blending on this piece turned out. However, I will be completely real. I did not gauge my horizon properly for the stencil that I chose. So the first thing that I would change, and probably the most impactful aspect, is my horizon line. I should have pulled the water line closer to the bottom of the board rather than having it so high. But I'll let you watch as I work to blend the colors to create the depth of the water and the shoreline. One more thing to note, I was working on this very late at night and my phone died without my knowing it. So I did not record the blending of the sunset. Once I realized this, I stopped for the night and came back to it the next day and sanded the piece before moving forward. The stencil that I had selected is called Lakeside Summer, and it is part of the Essential Stencil of the Month Club for June 2025. I fell in love with this from the moment I saw it, and I wanted so much to create this scene. So I kept going with it. It's all a learning experience. It's just paint. So I will try again at a later date and see if I can get the perspective correct. I'm using Fusion Mineral paint in Woodwick to stencil the boardwalk, but you can use any type of paint you choose to stencil. I'm switching over to the Essential Stencil domed brush for the cattails, and I'm using Fusion Mineral paint in Bayberry. The Stencil of the Month Club has two options. This is the premium set, and it comes with 3 sheets of 12 by 16 stencils. This stencil is also part of that set, and I'm using the Fusion Mineral paint in limestone for the lake life words. I will add a coat of clear brush-on sealer to this piece to seal and protect it. Now you can see how the boardwalk just trails off into the water. I wanted it to end at the horizon with the sun reflecting on the water, so this could be considered a fail, but I'm using it as a learning experience. Let me know what you think. For our 5th and final project today, I am using a 16-inch wood door round that I purchased from a store called Ollie's. Do you have this store in your area? I have taped off equal sections of the board, and I am applying the Minwax water-based stain in aged barrel. I love this color on raw wood because as it dries, it looks more and more like driftwood. I work in sections, and after I have applied the stain, I mist it with my water mister and then wipe back the excess stain. I could leave the full color on the wood, but I really like the effect this gives with the wood grain showing through. Once I have the top and the bottom of the board stained and dried, I'll reposition my tape and apply the navy blue stain, misting it and wiping back the excess to give it the weathered look. I'll dry this and then I'll remove the tape, and once you have applied moisture to raw wood, it raises the grain of the wood and makes it rough to the touch. So I'll use my sanding sponge and sand down the grain, leaving a silky smooth finish. This Essential Stencil set is called Beach Bums Welcome, and it's made for a 12-inch round. So if I want this centered on the 3 panels I created, I'll have to move the stencil around to fit. I'm not happy with the placement of the welcome word, so I'm going to bring in the customizable Coastal Welcome stencil set. This fits the space perfectly. I'll position the stencil and tape it down to keep it from shifting. I'm using the Fusion Mineral paint in limestone, and I'm going to be mixing it with a bit of the dark titanium white heavy body acrylic paint to create a custom color that really stands out on this background. For the O in the welcome, I am using the starfish that came in the customizable Coastal Welcome stencil set. And you can see here where I added the dark titanium white to the limestone to create the custom paint color. Next, I'll position the beach bums right above the starfish. I like the different fonts and how they seem to play off of each other. Mixing stencils makes the creative process much more fun for me. Do you like to mix your stencils? For the beach chairs, I am using just the limestone for the frames of the chairs as well as for the sea creatures that are positioned around them. I chose Willowbank by Fusion for the chair seats to complement the navy blue in the midsection. And for the top portion of the door hanger, I'm using just the limestone for the umbrella and the birds in the background. Once all of the stenciling is finished, I will dry the paint and give it a light sanding to knock off any raised edges around the stencil. A quick coat of a clear brush-on sealer, and I will switch out the hanger for a more nautical look, and this door hanger is ready to welcome guests for any beachside get-together with friends and family. Looking at this door round makes me want to sit in a beach chair with a drink in my hand, enjoying the summer sun and the company of good people. Let me know if you are right there with me. Let's take one last look at all 5 summer DIYs so good you'll want to live at the lake. For me, summer isn't complete without slowing down to enjoy the good things. Friends, family, and a little lakeside peace of mind. These decor pieces are a beautiful way to bring the summer vibes into your home all year long. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you're feeling inspired to bring a little lake life and summer magic into your own home. If you want more inspiration, join me every Thursday night live on Facebook at 6:30 Central. We have a lot of fun creating over there too. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so we can keep creating together. Until next time, keep practicing random acts of crafting. Bye for now.